Tasha? Yeah, just see if she's coming in. Oh, is she talking? Go. Okay, so we have two more. First, I was trying to get everybody in. So we'll do a meditation. First, how are you guys doing on your prayers? You ready to do the prayers?
I haven't memorized them perfectly. I still have to cheat by looking at it. Even though, like, for years, I just let other people say them. I can't say them by myself alone.
Mm-hmm. It took me, I think Hector did it, and he had them on the projector behind him, and I just read them for like a couple weeks in a row, and then that was it. Mm-hmm. But and actually I went on retreat and they did it like every like 3 times a day. So then I really got to practice them. But yeah, I mean, before that I heard them all the time. I never knew them. It's amazing.
Is it the
welcome, Coco? How are you?
Yeah.
Chupa?
With the other side, Mandel.
I have Mandela here.
Okay, so that's mandala. So the first thing we do is drop our mandala. And then we go to the flip side of that is Kyabdro Semki, which is refuge in English. So that would take refuge 3 times. Do you have that as well?
I have that.
Okay.
So you're saying we say mandala once?
Yes.
And then we go directly to say this 3 times?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And then at the end, we do the Noah dedication.
Okay.
And as Stephen said, you just kind of get, if you're interested, you get used to learning it in Tibetan just by studying in front of classes. You can do it yourself in front of, before your meditations if you want.
Well, when we're assigned to memorize it, is that in Tibetan or in English? In Tibetan, yeah.
But the thing with memorizing only in Tibetan, it's nice to know the English meaning. It's not that you have to be a Tibetan scholar, but you have to know that, hey, this is the refuge prayer, you know.
And the Bodhisattva, generating Bodhisattva.
Yeah, and things like that about it. So it's learn enough of the English aspect to know what it's about. I don't know, maybe next week we can do it in English.
It sounds like church when you do it in English.
It does. Well, there's a good reason. The English version that I know is put together and put to a tune by the Irish group of students, and the strong church following, and it just sounds like that. Although they did try to adhere to an existing Irish traditional song and put it to that rhythm, but it still sounds. But I think you can say it in any language that you're comfortable. Translate it into Spanish, Portuguese, whatever it is you want, and say it. Just keep it in your heart. That's the most important thing. Yay. Sure.
One is what's this hand mudra thing?
So the hand mudra is for the first prayer with the mandala, and you're using your fingers and your hand to essentially create a mandala, symbolic of a mandala. The mandala is basically a world system in this case, and it represents the 2 fingers. We'll go through how to do it in a minute, but the 2 fingers, the 2 ring fingers represent the center of the world, and it's called Mount Meru. It's referred to a lot, and then it's surrounded by 4 continents. So all the other fingers represent the 4 continents. And you're offering this, and you can in fact see this on a white moon disc or as well, and then offer it to the enlightened beings which you've invited as well, right? Because in the English it kind of says, here's the great earth filled with the smell of incense, blanket of flowers. It's an offering. It's got the traditional offerings in it. The great mountain in the middle, the 4 continents on the side, wearing the jewel of the sun and moon. in my mind, I make them the paradise of a Buddha. So they are a Buddha paradise in your mind. And the enlightened beings who are here that you've invited will see them as an enlightened paradise too. Just like they don't see a glass of water or a glass of liquid, they see a glass of bliss, right? And then you dedicate it into that, an act of truth, that by this deed may every living being experience the same paradise. So it's kind of a nice prayer. So to put your hands in the mudra. So the ring fingers come up into the middle to Mount Meru. And then you grab thumb and pinky. Yep. And then the other two fingers cross over like X's. Yeah. So it's, yeah.
Like that.
Yes. Yeah. Digit and middle fingers together on both sides. Yeah. And it's nice to eventually get comfortable. It's kind of, you don't make an offering down here. It is nice to hold up an offering as if you were offering it from your heart. Sashi
Kuki Shin Etotram Rira Lingshi Yende Yampadi Sangye Shindu Mikte Uwagi Drokun Namdak Shinla Druparsho Yam Guru Ratnamanda Kamniratayami
Sangye
Shulam Soki Choknamla Janchu Bardu Dakni Gyasuchi Daki Jinyang Gipe Sunamki Drola Kanchir Sangye Drupashok Sangye Chuyan Soki Choknamla Janchu Bardu Dakni Gyatsuchi Daki Jinyang Gipe Sunamki Drola Kanchir Sangye Drupashok Sangye Churam Soki Choknamla Janchu Bardu Dakni Kyatsuchi Daki Jinsong Gike Sunamki Drola Penchir Sangye Drupashok.
There's two things that I can say further to that. I suppose at the end, I did mention that we have the mandala here. And Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamnirya Tayami is Sanskrit. For I offer this to my Guru and all living beings. And may they be free. It's a little bit like the last line. And you take the mandala offering and you bring it into yourself. And you wash yourself with it, and you can see it washing, not only yourself, but all the beings in the lower realms too. There's different visualizations you can do. But just quite simply, it's drawn in and dissolved that way. And then there is one pronunciation change. On the third line of the refuge prayer, it says Jinso. So the prayer is written for someone who is going to be practicing alone in their practice hall, but before teaching and as a group, there's a different Jin Yang. Yeah. So that's why this is the actual prayer is this way, but it's through oral tradition. It's changed a little bit through the practice of doing it before teaching in a group.
So in a group, it's Jin Yang.
Yeah. Any other questions on the prayer?
I have one quick general question. When you're prostrating, what are these points that you're doing? What does that mean?
They represent the body, speech, and mind. So by touching the head, some people do like up here. I just do the forehead, body, speech, and mind. So speech is like more like the Adam's apple. It's not the mouth. It's where the vocal cords, and the mind is here in the heart area for in Buddhism, and basically taking refuge to the enlightened beings who are here on our altar in our lineage, which is all the teachers, and it's paying homage to their enlightened body, speech, and mind. And once again, do it 3 times, one prostration each. And I prostrate because I really believe in it and I like it, but it really don't, and it's really optional if you want to prostrate or not. It's up to you. But if you feel like it is, it's a lovely tradition to bow down to at least anybody. It's really nice. For the right reasons, it's really nice to do. Very humbling, and it's a nice practice. It's like sun salutes before the class. I'm all warmed up now. So let's start with the meditation. So everyone get very comfortable. Are you okay? So get very comfortable. We really want to relax in our meditations, especially early on. We want to at least start in a position in which we don't have much physical discomfort or even physical distraction. So you just want to kind of eliminate that as much as possible in the beginning before you get started. There's no need to make your meditations any more difficult than they need to be. And let's start just taking a couple of big exhalations. When you exhale, you relax. It's on the exhale that you start to relax the whole prana of the body and the mind as well. So bringing your mind into this room, separate from the busy day and whatever else we've got afterwards. Let's resolve to spend the next 15 minutes here with our minds in this room, really working on the meditation, really focusing, using our conscious awareness to bring attention to the object, staying relaxed, staying in the present. So become aware of the room, everything about this room, all the sounds in it. Be aware of your body in this room, how it feels. And start to be aware of the full cycle of breaths that you do. Let's look at the breath starting with the out and then the in. So a full exhale and then a full inhale. So bring your attention under your conscious control to the full cycle of the breath. And for a series of 10 breaths, pay full attention to every aspect of the exhalation, the pause, the inhalation, the pause, and then the exhalation again. Last week we had a guided meditation about how everything changes in our world, and even those things which bring pleasure and happiness and are good for us, that occur all the time in our lives, even they don't last. And then of course at the end of our lives, death rips everything away. We take nothing with us. This is one of the classical forms of suffering. We explored this to try to develop some renunciation. To not attach ourselves to these things, which will only cause us more suffering. To stop working for worldly goals. And work for things that will take us out of this cycle of suffering. That's what renunciation is. Stopping all mental and physical activities which just further perpetuate our worldly goals and our continued existence in this cycle of worldly existence. It doesn't have to be that way. We can change our entire relationship to things around us. And do those same things, but have them not be of worldly concern and not have worldly results, but instead divine results. Let's use one part of our day as an example. Think of the times today that you ate food and drank water. How much of those activities were you on automatic and mindlessly, without attention, consuming food and water just to perpetuate yourself in this world, to remove your hunger and your thirst, without thinking about others or what you would do with that now that you've got food and water in your stomach. Think about the frame of mind you had when you were eating today. Do you even remember? This rather banal example just shows a lack of renunciation. It shows how these important activities in our day just perpetuate our suffering. So how can we change that? try partaking of food and drink, which is so common to our existence. Such a matter of our own personal survival, and do it for someone else. See the food and drink as incredibly fortunate material that you have in this world of abundance, in this incredible city, in this incredible rich country, like kings on the planet. See this opportunity to eat and feed your body, your precious body, and nourish your precious body, because you need to be alive tomorrow to help others. You need to continue to study the Dharma so that you can help others. Your life of leisure and fortune is very rare, very precious. Hold this gem in your mind when doing things like taking food and drink. And with this worldview and the desire to do it for the benefit of others, you partake of the same banal, seemingly worldly activity, but you don't get worldly results. Renunciation means being able to partake of those same things without attachment, without desire, without craving, without a sense of loss, without a sense of gain. Doing it because you know it's the best thing for you to do in this world. Try watching your mind over the next week to see what it craves. What are its desires? Where does your mind move to? How do you react to it? Can you be dispassionate about a craving, a desire? Can you be neutral to it? Can you change that desire to, say, desire to do it for others rather than just obtaining it for yourself? Can you change that desire into something that doesn't become a worldly result? What would that look like? How would you do that? What does renunciation feel like in your heart? Can you identify? Try now. As often as you can over the next week, recall this feeling of renunciation in your heart. Try to develop it further, test it, explore it, question it. to study the Dharma using this precious human life and the leisure and fortune we have to develop renunciation, first of the three paths. When you're ready, you can come back into the room. Become aware of your body. And you can open your eyes when you're ready. All right. How are you? Good. Coco could come in. Keeping with our our new class structure, we'll do a review. So we want to review class 3, which we did last week, and then we'll break off into little groups and try to do homeworks, even for those who aren't doing homeworks. You can do a ghost pen in writing. It's good to learn. So we're going to talk a little bit later about the qualities of a student, but I want to mention something now. The whole purpose of these reviews, whether I do it in a class like this or the whole purpose of homework is a review, the whole purpose of the quiz is simply a review, and it's just a teaching technique that works to help you to retain the material so you don't become a leaky pot. And it does work. It really does work to review it. So they're just, don't see them as anything other than a blessing that it's going to help you retain what's learned. And it's done a lot by reducing all that you need to learn down to just like 3 things or 5 things. And that's the takeaway from 2 hours. And if you just retain that, then you're fantastic. You're in great shape. So try to rejoice when doing the homeworks because it's not a chore. It's an opportunity to retain the Dharma. So I'm not going to write these down again. However, we do need to review quickly the 10 qualities or 10 characteristics of a qualified Lama. Yay! We were all here last week, right? Let's hear. So we've all done them before. We covered them last week. Has anyone completed the homeworks and quizzes yet? Okay, so we'll do it in class a little bit. But you remember the homeworks are open book. So Richard, in your homework from previous ones, you were like, you don't have to say like I forgot because the homeworks are open book. You can always look it up. So now let's do it open book too. Let's do a quick review of the 10 characteristics of a qualified Lama.
Homework 4, right?
No, homework 3.
Because we did last week.
And I've got copies of it.
Oh, may I have one?
Sure. Yeah, we're doing a review. Homework and quiz, if anyone.
I kind of need
A book?
homework.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that should pass me around. Yeah, they are. There's basically one question on the homework and one question on the quiz.
Really?
How are you?
Fine.
It's one question with 10 parts. You can't really break it up. So yeah, they're identical. So does anyone, as we review these quickly, because you're also going to review them to do the homework and quiz.
Yeah.
Stop me if you have any questions about anything. If you're unclear about what they mean, because we're not going to go over them all in detail again, but we will. If you have any questions, we'll certainly spend time answering any questions.
Oh, quiz.
So starting with the top, number 1.
We can look at our notes for those.
Yeah, yes, it's all, review's totally open.
The first three are really easy because they're
Okay.
3 of the 6 perfections. I can't just remember exactly which 3 sometimes, but the last 2 of the 6 perfections are the second and third. So that's concentration and wisdom. But the first one's tough. It's like ethical life or morality, right?
Which is
Morality.
the second of the perfections.
Second is the second
six.
of the perfection. So that makes it easy. 3 out of 10 down quick.
And they're also called the 3 concentrations. So it's the concentration of morality, concentration of concentration of wisdom.
Or the 3 trainings.
The 3 trainings, that's it.
3 trains.
Depending how you translate it. But I think in this case, trainings is a little bit probably easier to work with. So the 3 trainings of morality, concentration or meditation or shamatha, and then wisdom. So it is easier. It's a block. And these are the first 3 qualities that you should be looking for in a teacher. Just quickly, why do we want to even be looking at a teacher and asking these kinds of questions? Because as we talked about earlier, it could be dangerous, right?
If you read this cool book, it talks about you are more than likely going to take on the shape of your teacher, just as a clay takes on the shape of the mold it's molded by. So you want to pick one that you really feel will give you a lot of auspicious virtues and blessings.
Yeah, you're going to be like that. And I think it carries through even in our other studies, our traditional stuff like education and high school, grade school, all that stuff. You do become like your teachers. I think we become like our parents, who are of course our teachers. So we become like our partners over time, and they're our teachers. And you become like your pet if you really love your pet. We're plastic minds. It's very important to be looking at a teacher, and today we'll talk about the teachings themselves, and really asking the right questions, doing your own critical analysis of them. Even Lord Buddha says you really need to get under the hood, find out who they are, what they're teaching, and if it works or not. Don't take anyone's word for it. The idea here in a course like this is that we give you this information which makes you qualified to make your own decisions, which also is another important thing. There's a lot of ideas out there. I think it's really proliferated with these blogs and posts on websites that everyone's got an opinion, and anyone who can just submit a comment to a blog all of a sudden becomes an author and stuff. And it's even more critical now for us as students to be having the right tools to make our own decisions and not rely on the fanfare that can be created by other people, and that we come to these decisions ourselves. So what's the 4th one?
Spiritual qualities exceed those of their students.
Yep. So they can help bring them through and give them what they need as they guide them along the path. And the 5th one is making great efforts, which is another, in a way, one of the other.
So the 4th, perfection.
Yeah. And it's a great quality of a Lama who it just takes joy in all of the difficult things to do in the preparation for teaching and all the translating that's required.
In fact, last week you actually said joy in the effort. So joyful effort, obviously.
I think so. Yeah, not just surviving the effort.
Yeah.
I think also does become joyful if you're a real teacher. You really love the Dharma, and it's a joy to teach. And it's a joy to see the light in someone's eyes when it connects. And they say, they come back a week later and said, I did that meditation and I'm getting great results from it. That's so beautiful. And I see it here. People come into the 3 jewels and then a year later, they're just totally changed. They're beaming, That's beautiful. And that's joyful because that result could happen and the teacher has it. Okay. 6th one is they're rich in scripture. Strong knowledge of all of the scriptural texts.
I hope that was in the 4.
4 is spiritual qualities exceeding that of their student. Are you looking at the notes or something?
I'm listening.
Okay, well, the explanation there is the teaching that was originally given follows a commentary by Jetsun Kappa, which didn't follow them logically. It followed them a different order, probably from the order of the Sanskrit or something. But this is the commentary as it's been given in Bhakti-Bonka Rinpoche.
Okay.
So the seventh?
Deep realization of emptiness.
Yes. So this is much more about the direct perception of emptiness, if they can. And it's a rare feat, but if it's the realization, the important thing isn't that, and Lord Buddha said this, I think, I don't know the exact sutra for this, but I would like to find it. He says that it's not important that you, it's not so much that you've reached a certain level and like, oh, I got there, like say the direct perception of emptiness. The most important thing, and what he teaches, is who you become afterwards. So it's the results of that which are more important, right? It's who you become because you've seen emptiness directly, or you've had a direct perception of bodhicitta. And those are the qualities that we need to strive for, and those are what we can look for in a teacher. It's not so much that they reached a benchmark and then automatically it happens, you know? You could reach that benchmark maybe, and then something else happens. And the important thing is who you become afterwards as a result of that experience. So in this regard, look for a teacher who would have the qualities of someone who has seen emptiness directly.
But those of us who don't really even understand emptiness, or sometimes intellectually can sort of sometimes get good at talking about it, but not having even an understanding, let alone a direct perception of emptiness. How do we know if a teacher does? Or do people who have had direct perceptions of emptiness say so?
Generally not.
Huh.
And you may never know.
Huh.
So that's why I give a commentary that don't take this literally. You know, teachers don't come with resumes.
Yeah.
And they didn't like say, oh yeah, I got direct perception of emptiness at Cornell University. You know, it's not like that. It's very different. So with the skills of understanding how to look at a teacher and what they're teaching, you make your own judgments, right?
But isn't that the inference that's being offered? Look at the qualities of the teacher.
Yeah.
That's the inference of emptiness. I mean, that's as close as I can get.
Mm-hmm.
So common sense says I have to embrace what my teacher is offering me.
Yes.
And I am responsible in the relationship, not with letting him decide, but I need to decide.
Yes, you're fully responsible in the relationship with your Lama. Yeah, that's very important.
So as best as I can, I approach, for instance, your question, which is actually very important.
Mm-hmm.
You know, your point is very true, is taking responsibility and not assuming, because that's where we begin to get in trouble. We're not paying attention to what's being asked of us.
Yep. And you know, at a certain point in your relationship with your Lama, you can ask them. You know, you could, you know, it's not out of the question, right? You'll have a lot of like one-on-ones with your Lama. You'll have a lot of like oral transmissions to you, just some private advices, and you know, maybe it'll all come out and it'll be answered. Maybe he'll know that, or they'll know that you have that question, and we'll let you know. You know, there's a lot of ways it could happen. So the eighth should be a master instructor. Means they teach at their students' level, which is really important. In part because if you don't, the student may not learn and may just be turned away from the Dharma. So the skillful means of a teacher is to teach what the student needs at that time, because that's what they're going to get the most benefit from. And then they'll use the Dharma.
Is that the same as skillful?
Yeah, it's skillful.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the ninth one is they teach out of love for their students. It's a bit like that joy. If you're going to have that joy, you're going to love them, and vice versa. The love will create the joy in teaching. And it doesn't have to be a one-on-one love with the students. It's a general love of wanting to help beings eliminate their suffering and help them on the path. There's a love for all beings just in wanting to do that. It's some bodhicitta, you know. It's that kind of love. Number 10.
Never tire of teaching.
Never tire of teaching. Yeah, or getting discouraged. You know, no matter what happens, like if the students or Dharma Center closes, or you know, you can't tire of things. You've got to keep going. Like everything else, there's going to be obstacles, right? Everything, any career, any path in life, there's obstacles, and you just have to have enough resolve to move through them, and don't jump ship just because something came up, because that's not what the students need. They need that stability. A student doesn't learn the Dharma in 10 classes. It's a lifetime of work. And it's the longer you can have a relationship with someone who can teach you, the longer they're able to help you. And enroll with a teacher is critical because there's no text that says you can get there by just reading books. You can't reach nirvana, you can't reach total enlightenment by just reading books. You need a teacher. So, you know, you've got to have a teacher, so let's get the tools to be able to get the right teacher, right? And keep in mind that the right teacher for you may be not the right teacher for the next person. And that's important. There's as many teachers out there as people that need them. And that's perfect, and that's perfectly fine. And not everyone should just love this one teacher, or everyone just loves every teacher. It's unique, you know? It's a very special relationship with the Lama. Okay, so that's the review. Do people still need time to do it as homework? Or are you guys just writing it in as you go?
No, we should do it.
So why don't we just do the quiz now?
It's the same thing.
Which is the same thing. But if
It's
you're
a
not
label.
But if you just reviewed it, it's easy to remember. So we'll take 5 minutes to do the homeworks and quizzes. If anyone needs to buddy up, it's a good time to collaborate too.
On the quiz?
Well, just on the homeworks. If they're still working on the homeworks.
Are you reviewing homeworks yourself? If I give them to you? I
Yep.
mean, you already did the course and sent them in, but if you want to.
Sure. I'll grade them again.
Alright. I'm gonna give them all to you at one time,
Okay.
rather than pieces, so I know which homework I
Okay.
have and which quiz, okay?
Yeah. Whenever you want, I'll grade the homeworks.
Thank
If you
you.
want to do it after every class or at the end of the course, it's fine too. Quiz with a soundtrack. Scary beginning homeworks.
Stop expressing my mind.
So this class 6?
This is class 4. We're going to
No,
start.
but I mean,
Course 1. Today?
no, what is class 6?
Diamond cutter?
Course 6?
Yeah, of course 6.
It's the Diamond Cutter Sutra.
Oh.
And tonight we're in
No,
course.
no, it has to do with the voices downstairs.
Oh, I see.
Oh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. What were you thinking about the voice?
Well, it's the wrong course. The one where our demon friends from nether regions.
Uh-huh.
Well, my close friends who remind us that life is precious.
Uh-huh.
Short.
I think it's course 8.
Is it?
Yeah.
Death
Death
in
in
the
the realms of
Yeah,
vision.
thank you.
Yeah. That's why I love animals so much. They
Mhm.
remind me of other realms.
Say again?
They remind me of animal realms, other realms, animals. You know, if we only saw humans, we'd only believe in one realm. But there's 6 realms, and we see another realm. It's the animal realm. And many people can see other realms too, but fewer. You know, we can all see animals from them.
Well, we seem to be influenced by them. We don't take credit for having a relationship with them,
Mm-hmm.
which is ironic since we take credit for so many things. Right?
It's our humanness.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, conscious mind.
Do you have any other quizzes on here?
From other classes?
Yeah.
Sure.
Awesome.
I think I have a backlog.
Oh.
Printed copies.
Great, if you don't mind.
Which one? Do you know?
From class 2 and both if you have class 1.
Okay, let's see what I got here.
Thank you. And if you don't know.
I don't know. It may have become skeptic.
Thanks for checking in.
Homework. Just homeworks.
For
2.
1?
No, just class 2.
Okay.
No quizzes either.
Got plenty of those.
A lot of people came last week, and that's why they all went.
How'd your homeworks go? Good.
You fall asleep in this class. Or in that class. I read through your background. You must love that stuff. You probably do love it.
It seems like just all therapy or something.
So what?
Gestalt
Therapy.
screen therapy.
We should start yelling back one day.
Good
Like, what?
Just when they're really quiet,
Yeah.
then we'll get them. Then they'll get it.
And we're actually on top, so if we jumped up and down, it'd probably be way louder. Wouldn't know what
In
was
time
coming.
with their chanting.
Yeah.
All right, just another minute and wrap up, and then we'll start the class. Any questions on last week's material, the 10 qualities?
I guess it's interesting for me to think about like what you're supposed to do with this, or why they teach it, since as the student you would never be able to really grade your teacher, and that wouldn't be like polite or open-minded, or I guess it's almost like you could aspire to all of these things, or it makes me think as the student, why do I learn this? It seems all valuable, but in the name of like analyzing, what would be the reason?
How would you use it?
Yeah, like
I think it is important if you were to be able to have a scriptural reference and say, you know, my Lama is doing, like, I don't agree with that, or something's not right, and then have a scriptural reference to refer to, and say, you know, I don't feel that they have students above those of their students, or qualities above those of their students, or they're not teaching with love in their heart, and they come to class and just complain and talk about how much they worked for the class and then grumble off. You know, then rather than accepting that, it's like, oh, okay, that's just the way a teacher is, you could say, well, it doesn't have to be that way. In fact, maybe, there's an authentic source from Master Asanga who says, they shouldn't be that way. Maybe in that regard, it is be careful to like hold it up and say, you don't meet number 9. I'm walking out, or whatever. It's not for that so much. And they are good to aspire to. And it's like, how do you know if the teacher knows more than the students? It's really hard. So some of these things can't really be measured in that regard. It's tough, yeah.
No, that makes sense. If a teacher seems a little shaky, I guess Buddhism is nice that tells you to question.
Yeah, definitely.
So even question your teacher, you come up with it for yourself.
Yeah.
That's good.
Now you can question, and that's a very important aspect of Buddhism. Criticism is something different. So questioning is encouraged, debate, but you can do all of that and make an informed decision, and not be like critical. And that's the important thing. That's what we were talking about earlier. And being critical of a holy object, like a teacher or another Lama. Like not everyone likes the Dalai Lama, right? You were earlier like, who wouldn't? Like many people don't. So, you can choose not to study with someone as a teacher, have that student-teacher relationship. But for your reasons, logically arrived at, perfectly fine, no problem at all. Just be careful not to criticize them, because the next person can be perfect for that person. And you have to respect that. And you don't want to upset their path. There is a vow of actually a little bit different, but basically taking someone off of their path, And one of the ways to do it maybe would be criticize their Lama, or maybe a shared Lama, and you just go, and you just start all this, and then then they get doubt, and then they're not studying the Dharma, and then you have that karma. So.
Could you also call that divisive speech?
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
There's also a really great line out of Advice from a Teacher's Heart, where he said, never find fault with others, look only for fault in yourself. And so that kind of ties into that same idea.
Yeah. And things change over time. And you come back to a teacher a couple of years later and you're like you were right, So everything changes in some time. So best not to criticize.
I think there's also that advice where you watch a teacher, I didn't hear exactly your question, what you said, but when you watch someone for 12 years and you learn about them, so you really study them, you look at their students and that kind of thing, but you really take a long time. It's like, not like, oh, I took a few classes, really over a long period.
Yeah, and looking at the students is a good way to do that. And then if you want to look at the teachers coming out of a yoga teacher program and see if you want to be like them, look at the peers around you, look at the Sangha, do you want to be a part of that? Do you want to be like that? Do you see benefit? Do you see with anyone else being happy? And you want to be like that? There's a lot of subjective things that aren't listed here to undergo. Take time. Yeah. Okay, tonight's class then. So we've obviously gone over the qualities of a teacher. So we got 2 other kind of things to talk about in an introductory to Buddhism course. And can you imagine what they might be?
Bodhicitta and wisdom.
Well, with regard to, on the line of teacher, so the qualities of a teacher, now we have to look at the qualities of a teaching.
Oh, I gotcha.
So what becomes
and then the
qualities of a qualified teaching or authentic Dharma? So that once again, you've got the tools to say, this is not authentic, it's teaching something which I know the Lord Buddha wouldn't have taught. And then after that we'll talk over the third element of all of this, which is of course
The student?
us, the students. How should we be? Because we obviously have a role. You can't put everything on the teaching and the teachers. We have a role obviously as a student. So we need to have some qualities to be fulfilled as well. So we'll go over those real quick. The first quality that a good Dharma, a good teaching should have is that it needs to come from an authoritative source. That's why the lineage is so important. And that's why the lineage is kind of on our altar there, and that's why we take refuge in the lineage. So the ultimate authentic source is Shakyamuni Buddha, Muni Buddha, who was the Buddha in our realm and showed himself.
People say the first Buddha of our time.
Mm-hmm.
But who are the Buddhas from the previous times? We just have no idea? Or?
Oh, they're listed.
There are?
Yeah.
Huh.
And I came across the name of the previous Buddha from the previous eon, and I can't remember his name, but have you heard of Maitreya?
Yeah.
He's considered to be the Buddha for the next eon.
Yeah.
The next time.
But
So
were
they
there
call
some
them
kings
sutras.
of something that were from some previous realm? I don't know. I'll have to look it up. I think I saw something online. It seemed
Wheel
interesting.
turners.
Huh.
But yeah, they're so we say there are many Buddhas right now. There are many enlightened beings, and Shakyamuni Buddha manifested in our realm and brought us these teachings for our benefit for this time. And it helps to stop thinking of time as linear in three components, because especially when we're talking about the length of eons, and here we are in such a small fraction of an eon. So. Back to the first quality of a good Dharma would be taught by an authoritative source, and for us it's Lord Buddha. So we're talking about the direct sutras of Lord Buddha as being an authentic source. So what are those? It's reputed he taught 84,000 teachings, which are 84,000 antidotes to your 84,000 mental afflictions.
Is that really why? Yeah, okay.
So we don't have 84,000 teachings of Lord Buddha extant right now, but we do have a large canon of work that we all work from, and it's called the Kangyur in Tibet. Okay. And Kangyur means here's a Tibetan word you'll hear a lot. Kangyur.
See?
Kangyur, which means translated words. So the words of the Lord Buddha translated. So they are the sutras and tantras that were taught by Lord Buddha and translated into other languages that currently exist in Tibet. Tibet has the largest repository of the teachings of the Buddha on the planet now. Through the courses of history and events, most of Buddhism in the monasteries there that were housing all of these teachings were wiped out. And then, right before that time, much of the teachings went north over the Himalayas, and then they were translated by famous translators into Tibetan. And now those are starting to surface, and they're under threat. They've been under threat for the last 50 years. But the Kangyur is a Tibetan word meaning the translated words of Lord Buddha that exist in that canon. There are anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200 major volumes. Some people say 1,008 or 1,108 to make an auspicious number. But in truth, the Kangyur, there are many versions of the Kangyur, and it's up to the editor of that collection to say this text is in or not. You may have, I don't know if you heard like the Lhasa or the Durga version of the Kangyur. There are different versions of that large collection, different collection of books.
What did you say the last one was?
Lhasa or Durga, the city where the printing took place.
Oh yeah. But we know he lived to be so many years old.
Yeah.
So if you say that there are 84,000 teachings, and he lived to be 80 years old, that's like 100 teachings a year.
Well, it's not individual teachings. Maybe one teaching that he was giving over a course of a weekend maybe had 10,000 solutions in it. And he didn't list them out, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And no one's gone through and matched up to 84,000. It's reputed that.
Right.
The idea is that Lord Buddha taught us antidotes to every one of our mental afflictions, which then became a perfect path for us to eliminate the mental afflictions, achieve nirvana, and then achieve total enlightenment. Right? If he didn't, how could that be a pure teaching? Because it wasn't a complete path. But no one's doing the math. No one's looking. No one's found 84,000 teachings. Or you could say that they're all assumed within these 1,000 volumes. Let's see if there's anything else. One aspect of this is important. So how do our Lord Buddha's teachings relevant for us now, 2,500 years later?
People still deal with the same mental afflictions.
We do. Yeah, the top ones are still there, right?
Yeah.
And there's another component. And that is, remember that one of the qualities of a Buddha is that they have the Dharmakaya. It's one of the two main bodies of a Buddha, right? And one of those aspects is their omniscience. So omniscience kind of flattens out time, because you know all things in all three times. So for Lord Buddha 2,500 years ago, he knew exactly that we were going to be teaching this today, as much as he knew what was going on in that historical time. It's flat, and it could, it wasn't just an extrapolated version of a good guess. His omniscience, that omniscience knows what is needed to be taught for us, which is why he became the Buddha and the teacher for us in this eon, in this time, because this is what we needed. In other words, a Buddha's teaching in another realm, in another eon, might be different, based on the needs of those beings in that time.
Sometimes you hear the word degenerate time, like this degenerate time. Did it start like with 2,500 years ago? Is this still a degenerate time, or is it?
It started many long eons ago. Many years, tens of thousands. Prior to Lord Buddha. The degenerate times, according to the yoga teaching, started around 6,500 years ago, the Kali Yuga. But in a Buddhist worldview, in the Abhidharma, there's all worlds go through a period of build-up, crescendo, and then decay, right? And then that becomes like 10 to the 60th number of years, and that's an eon worth of existence. And we are now just, all that means at degenerate times is we passed our peak. We're beings were living over 1,000 years and stuff, and now our lifeline has started to decline. The teachings have declined. There's less dharma in the world. There's other things that indicate that we are in decline. Basically, we passed our peak in this eon, and we're going down eventually to the end of the eon, which they say will burn up like the sun supernova, just melting us.
Do you remember something about in the years of the last 500? Do you remember hearing this?
What happens in the years of the last 500?
Yeah, like the last 500, I guess that the Dharma would be around for a certain amount of time from this Buddha, and the last 500 years, things would degenerate rather quickly, which was hard. Oh, okay. But it also meant something. I'm tying this into some other teaching you're probably.
This was the Diamond Cutter Sutra. Yeah.
Okay.
And then, but the teachings become that much more powerful for those who are able to take advantage of them. Yeah. They would be that much strong, that much more concentrated the worse times got.
Mm-hmm. Which is true, and there's a great practice that we do, which is more powerful now because it's the degenerate time, and the practices might change based on what part of the eon it is. Yeah, that's a good point.
I thought I don't know why I thought it was the last 500, like the last 500 years of the 2,500. I don't know why I thought that.
Yeah, there's different. Yeah, we can't go into it here, but there are different times when you can tell when the Buddhist teachings are fading out, and there are fewer and fewer of them, and all of a sudden no one has the text, and it's just oral again. And then it gets lost, and eventually they're lost again. And then another Buddha comes and teaches another time.
Maitreya
will be the next. Yes. So, being omniscient, he knew what to teach us, and he knew it would be appropriate for us. So it still becomes an authentic source. We can't say it's not authentic just because it was written a long time ago. It wasn't specific to the time. It definitely was something, teachings which transcend time.
Wait, was that? That's just part of number one.
Yeah, and then it's an authentic source.
Just a quick question. Is there a text that's like Buddha said?
Yeah, this is called the sutras. So the sutras are called the words spoken by the Buddha. And he originally taught he spoke a lot of. India is a polyglot of languages, especially thousands of years ago, and each village would have its own language. He was able to speak a lot of those languages. Common at the time was Pali. A lot of the texts weren't transcribed at the time, but there were what do they call them, canons to gather his teachings after he died, and a lot of the Aryas at the time, the Arhats actually, got together and recalled those teachings and started to write them down. So the original writings were in Pali, and then some of them were in Sanskrit, or they were translated to Sanskrit later on. Then most of the texts in Tibet were translated from Sanskrit. So the Sanskrit texts were either carried over the mountains into Tibet and then translated there, or a lot of the translators from Tibet came down and worked with Indian monasteries and scholars in India, and either carried some back or carried just back the Tibetan versions. There's also a fair amount of teachings in Tibetan that came through China. So even though we may not have those sutras in Sanskrit, we can presume that there's a Sanskrit base somewhere. But in fact, the only extant version is in China, and then it was brought to Tibet and translated to Tibetan from there. And they're very clearly sutras. I mean, they know what they are. They all have titles, and you very clearly know that it was spoken by Lord Buddha. It gives a time and a place, in Vulture's Peak or in Rajagriha, or these different types of things. And it talks about the bodhisattvas that were there, which of his disciples asked the questions. Ananda or Subhuti, and these different of his disciples, and it goes through the dialogue. So yeah, it's very clear what he taught. There's not much dispute about that. And then later on, another group of collection is called the Tengyur, and those are commentaries in a way, or treatises, translated treatises. Tengyur is Tengyur, Tibetan word for translated treatises. So these treatises are like a second generation of teachings, and they're primarily commentaries. Great Tengyur texts are Arya Nagarjuna, who developed the Middle Way school based on explanations of the original first Buddhist teachings. Nagarjuna lived around 100 to 200 AD, so call it 600-700 years after Lord Buddha, and he basically commented on Lord Buddha's teaching of 600 years previously and redefined it for people because he thought that people weren't understanding it correctly. His students, Aryadeva, also expounding on the Buddha's teachings, all the way through masters like Master Asanga, who's a source of a lot of our material, Master Vasubandhu, who received a lot of his teachings from Maitreya, for example, a future Buddha. If you remember in the text for this course, Tsongkhapa had a lot of connections with who? Manjushri.
Gentle voice.
Yes.
What?
Remember? Gentle voice, Manjushri.
Gentle voice. Isn't it like the sword of Manjushri is like stainless wisdom?
That's a symbol of his.
A symbol?
Mm-hmm.
But it's gentle voice.
Yeah. That's one of his.
Why gentle voice? Because he had a gentle voice?
He was a divine being. He had a very gentle voice.
Why don't you tell us?
When you meet him, let us know.
Okay.
So, once again, some of these Tengyur commentaries do come from divine beings, whether it's Maitreya or Manjushri, and they become part of the Tengyur canon and become commentary and translated treatises. So once again, you're looking for the point is you're looking for an authentic source for your teachings, and that it wasn't someone who, I don't know, I think some extreme example who did it after work for a year and on weekends in Boston, and came out and says, "This is the best thing this is better than Buddha's teaching." It's important because you need to evaluate what these teachings and where they're coming from. You're going to look all these books, all these teachers that come through. You need these tools to be able to evaluate whether that's proper teaching or not. Okay, so something to consider. So let's keep moving. The second one, second part of how to determine its authentic teaching is the fact that there's been commentaries over the years which have cleaned out through any corruption in the teachings. So Jason Kappa comes to mind for that. He went through an incredible amount of teachings that from India, directly from Lord Buddha, and also Nagarjuna, of course, a huge amount. And he went through them and he kind of reclassified them. And he brought them, he dispelled a lot of myths that were starting, and he basically did it because he saw a lot of misperceptions of these teachings. And you can, it's very easy, it's not cut and dry. There's a reason why there's commentaries to begin with, because if you look at the original sutras, it's very obscure. Very obscure, and the commentaries become truly important. Look at our text, it's only 14 verses. It's obscure in itself, and that was written in 1400, and we're basically living off of the commentary that was written in the 1920s, late 20s. So the commentaries are hugely important. They've been hugely important for me. If I just had the raw text, it's very hard to understand a lot of this stuff. So when you're evaluating the teaching, you evaluate the commentary too, and the lineage of the commentary. So the second one is basically that teachings have been cleaned and purified over the time, and there are a lot of wrong perceptions of teachings, right? There's and you'll get to know them. Maybe you'll hear, I was in a yoga teaching a long time ago, but this teacher was going on and on about causality, and then he started calling it karma, but then he kind of said that it never ripens on you, so you don't have to worry about it. And I raised my hand, and I was like, you're saying that it doesn't matter, that you can do anything we want in this life, and we don't have to have any effect for any of our actions in this world. And he's like, yeah. And like, for me, that's a wrong teaching, because it doesn't teach morality, it doesn't teach our responsibility that we're talking about for our actions, body, speech, and mind. And with these kind of tools, you can say, like, that's not for me, that's a wrong teaching. Another one I see persisting a lot, it's a small point, but a lot of texts, a lot of things, like you go to a Wikipedia page or a media site, not necessarily a strong Dharma book, and it'll say that bodhisattvas delay their enlightenment so that they can stay on this planet until every other being is saved first, or something like that. And that doesn't jive either, because one, you can't prevent yourself from reaching enlightenment. It's a karmic result. And if you're doing all that virtue, you're moving through the stages and the bodhisattva levels, and you're going to be enlightened. It's not a willful thing, for one. And two, if you were a true bodhisattva, you would know that the easiest and most effective way of helping people is to reach total enlightenment first, because then you have the wisdom, the omniscience to be able to truly help them. And until then, you're not helping them nearly as much, nor are you helping as many people. So it's a misperception that I always see a lot, and sometimes it's simply a translation which comes down. One of Geshe-la's pet peeves is noble truths versus Arya truths, and that's simply a translation. And they're basically the truths that everyone realizes directly when you become an Arya. And Lord Buddha was an Arya, and he had these truths. But noble has so many other things, especially in our world now. There's no nobility about those truths. It's just an Arya truth. So those are important things that you'll be looking out for when you read text. So the third and last quality of a good teaching: when a master practitioner has gone and studied these materials and put them into practice, that they work, that the practitioner achieves the results of the teachings. And this is crucial. I mentioned this earlier, that you have to judge the Dharma and your experience on it, and your experience of a teacher, whether these teachings are helping you or not. I sat in on a meditation on Sunday, and it was really beautiful. The teacher was just so enthusiastic because they worked for her, and her life was changed because of it. And, it was true. And, it was a valid teaching for her. And it was really cool that way. And it's easy to put these things into practice, and it's easy to evaluate whether they work or not. You don't have to, wait 100 years. Your life should be getting better. It's not going to be without some ups and downs. Of course, it's life. We're in samsara, but you will change. You will see a change. You will see less suffering. You will be able to take control of your mind. You will be able to understand these teachings, and you'll be able to have a wisdom of understanding of everything that's happening, and evaluate it based on that. And does it work for you? Does Tonglen meditation work for you? Can you develop renunciation if you were to do these renunciation meditations every day really deeply? Does it work to develop renunciation? Does it work, these bodhicitta meditations, to develop bodhicitta?
But sometimes, it might seem to work like that weekend. But I mean, I would guess you'd want it to work for a longer period of time to really prove to yourself that it works.
Which is, it's whether working is a karmic ripening, right?
Yeah.
And just because you had a karmic ripening doesn't mean it's going to be that way forever. And so you had on that weekend a really deep experience, and then you maybe drifted back, and that's perfectly normal because the karma shifted. But the more you practice, the more it becomes consistent. It becomes steadier. It does. It's really interesting to take stock of your life as a Dharma student over like a year and then 5 years, and sometimes the people around you will be the marker, because we don't see ourselves like getting gray hair and all these other things. But you see someone once a year, and they're like, "Oh my God, you've changed so much." I'm like, "Wow, what I didn't do? I don't shave today, And they're like, "No, there's something like your eyes are so happy, It's something different. Like you wouldn't see it waking up and looking at yourself in the mirror every day." So look out for those types of things. It works, right? It has to work. Don't do it if it doesn't work. How many times, how many people try to avoid colds in the winter, right? And how many people have this perfect recipe that works for them? It's like chugging raw garlic, or someone in an emergency, somebody it's airborne, or someone told me at work the other day that their Korean grandmother distills this toxic kimchi, and she makes them eat it. Everyone's got this stuff, right? And of course I've tried it. I've tried some of those. I'd try anything not to get a cold, right? And if it doesn't work for me, I don't tell them about it. I never pass that on, right? I never tell someone to do something that doesn't work. If it doesn't help me to get rid of the cold, then I don't say it. It doesn't pass on. You see, there's no lineage of it. It doesn't continue. If it works, you tell someone about it. And if the teachings work for you, it continues. And that's why we have authentic teachings 2,500 years later. And that's why inauthentic teachings may only last a generation or two, because it doesn't get carried on, because it doesn't work.
I think it's a really interesting point, though, because in our culture, we always have the self-help book of the year. There's always looking for the fast fix, or the pill to fix it.
Yeah.
So we're so used to why isn't this pill working? This week is it the pill? Is it is it the teaching? Is it no? And it's true. It's what does it take for someone to have the karma to keep studying and keep applying and keep, even when it gets rough, to keep staying the course, or whatever it takes to keep going to actually find out if it actually works. How far, how long do you have to go before it does work? And what does working mean? When you're first studying, we don't even know what the end's gonna look like, or when we're there, or where we are necessarily.
It's true.
When we're there, so it's
those points though in your life when disaster strikes, a divorce, you lose your house, whatever, a death in the family, those are real measure points of your Dharma practice. Sometimes that's what kicks you into your Dharma practice. You're like, I am so sick of this suffering. I need to get out. Something's got to be better than this. I know life. There's got to be better than this, and this is shit. And find me a path. And that's a lot of reasons. Most Dharma students have something in an event in their life which just convince them to look on the web, where can I find Dharma in New York, and go looking for it, and looking for a teacher. And then, as you're a student and something happens, how you respond and react is very important. You'll see how you've changed in that. And those are tough times, and those are the times that test you, and then you'll see. Yay!
Because it's interesting, because even though we're now studying, we might be having karma ripen from 10 years ago, 2 lifetimes ago.
Right, go on,
So,
keep going.
so yeah, like several eons ago. So I guess the teachings help us to like deal with the bad karma, which is going to come. It's not causing the bad karma, right? Or the teaching might help us develop the potential for good karma in the future, to plant seeds and stuff that may not come for several lifetimes or eons, right? So it's kind of, it's not like, oh, you know, this weekend I practiced and this week went great, you know? It's like sometimes it's not necessarily immediate.
Suddenly you're pointing to both of you, all of us, is that karma stays, essentially, but good and bad switch. So good karma becomes bad karma, and bad karma becomes good. So what's empty about all this is we don't know where we are to cognize and experience an event. You know, we're locked in time and space. So we have a form which we follow through on, and then we have an event. And so we're locked into a drama, a dance, out of which what you're saying is be mindful, you know, progressively. Right. So my witnessing my nonsense or my work or my effort or those around me or my teachers is in a sense like the commentaries that have cleaned up and taken out all the weeds so that the teachings are pure. So I'm purifying myself to recognize the nature of things. So good and bad become interchangeable or different, and not really the point. You know, notwithstanding what you're talking about. There are desired goals. There are, you want to do your homework, you want to meditate 20, you know, this is all here for us to do.
And you keep your morality as a good.
I remember now, one of the selling points for me to study was Geshe talking about this path to enlightenment, or the Lam Rim, and that you could see where you are on the path. It's like you didn't have to rely on somebody else to tell you where you are. And I found that so helpful. It was such like a point, oh, you mean wait, I'll be able to tell like just how far, what I have to do to. So that was really helpful.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, the Lam Rim, steps of the path. I love looking at the outlines of the Lam Rim. I think I said this already.
Oh, sorry,
It's
I didn't
so
say what
detailed.
it was. Right. Oh, steps on the path to enlightenment.
Yeah.
Right, so it was actually written out like step by step by step, and you
see
could
where
tell
you are.
like, you know, okay, if you practice this step, you know, did it work? You know, did it take you to step 2? Then, you know, like, and it would help you get closer and then.
And it's a graduated path. You can start on one end and take you to the other.
And it's funny because, you know, you realize you've been, the system which is laid out so generously. Is I spend all my time fighting the work that somebody else offered me. Instead, just like the suffering you're talking about, it's like, stop your nonsense, cut out the crap, just look at it. Just rest with it.
Surrendering is a beautiful, beautiful role of a student. It's
is
not
that where we
listed. Yeah, we can go into that.
And it's so practical.
It is. All we have to do is listen and do it. Yeah, we resist a lot. So I'm just going to review. Those are the 3 qualities of authentic teaching. Is it authentic source? It has been cleaned of all impurities, weeded out, as you said, through the influence of great commentators through the years, and it achieves the results that it says it does. I love the expression once. It does what it says on the can. You know, if it says it'll clean your drain, it'll do it. You know, it does. The can says you can reach enlightenment. The can says you can be a happier person. The can says it doesn't have to be full of suffering. You know, and it does that. And you know, I'm not telling you it does that. You have to make that decision. This is your role as a student to be evaluating the teachings this way. And there are a lot of teachings now. And in America, things have gone, you know, the 2nd, 3rd generation of teachings here, and people are writing their own teachings. And it's not to say they're inauthentic. It's just that you now have some criteria to be able to evaluate them. Using your intelligence, you know, do so. Just don't take anything, because this Dharma will shape your mind. It's like the clay you were talking about earlier. So be careful. Your mind is precious. This life is precious. Your time is precious. And make sure you've got the gems in your hand that you want to be working with. So now let's go to the qualities that we should have as students, because that's important. And then that'll sum up basically our introduction on teachers, teachings, and we as students. So again, 3 qualities for a student. I'll just read them out here. A proper vessel for the Dharma, we're vessels, by the way, is to be impartial, intelligent, and aspiring to the highest goal.
Impartial, intelligent?
Intelligent, yeah, which we'll describe that.
What was the last one again for those of us who are?
Strives to the highest goal. Aspires to the highest goal. So this teaching of these three qualities of a student comes from a different teaching. It's from Aryadeva, who around 200 AD was one of Nagarjuna's students, great master of emptiness and explainer of the middle way school view of emptiness. And this verse is chopped out of Aryadeva's teaching of the 400 verses. But before we get into those, remember we had three qualities of a student given in the first class. And it was in the reading. Anyone remember? We're all pots in that case.
Oh, yeah,
another
pots.
vessel.
It sounded like the pots when you were saying
Well, vessel, pot, right?
Vessel, pot.
Yeah.
So what are the three problems of the pot?
Having a closed list.
Which means?
Not paying attention, or
Uh-huh.
not open to the teaching.
In class, like, or even after, yeah.
Or having a dirty
Uh-huh.
pot,
Yeah, which means?
incorrect understanding maybe?
No motivation.
Incorrect motivation.
Uh-huh.
They're there for the wrong reasons.
Wrong reasons, yeah.
What would the wrong reason be?
Oh, wrong reason, like, say I want to learn this topic so that I can debate someone and beat them, but I'm never going to practice it. So for a worldly goal or to gain fame, something like that. Some people go after a lot of empowerment and things just to like build up the resume. I've got this and study with this person. And if they're not practicing, it's all for the wrong reasons. And the third one?
A leaky pot?
Yep.
It's got a hole in it.
Yeah.
You don't retain the teaching.
Not retaining the teachings. Yeah, and that's a tough one. I think for me, is to remember all the teachings we've had, and so that's why I emphasized it in the beginning of the class and how important homeworks are. It just helps you retain the teachings. So with those three qualities of a student, you have to have the motivation into class to have the right motivation. You have to pay attention in class so that you can learn, and that also means not coming in with preconceived ideas and being open to whatever the teaching is so that you can evaluate it and that it can sink in. And the other is that you retain what's taught so that you can use it. There's an old Zen saying that two students went up to a Zen master. One guy said, I want you to teach me. And the master said, okay, so what do you know? And he went on this long thing about all the stuff he knows. And then the other student comes up and he says, I want you to teach me. And the master says, what do you know? And he says, I don't know anything. So you know the story. The second guy gets in. You know, he was an empty pot in that sense, that his cup could be filled, the metaphor, with the teachings and the Dharma from his master. If you come into a teaching with preconceived ideas, you're not open to new teachings. You're not open to what the teacher has to say in the lineage. So there's another way of just being receptive to things. So back to our three from Master Aryadeva. First one is that be impartial. Not having preconceptions about what the teaching is, what the teacher is, what the classroom is, you know. Impartial kind of goes like what I was talking about, not coming in with preconceived ideas. And that's important. I mean, these are common sense. These are important for any teaching. Anything you want to learn, you can't assume to be partial and know what's right. Second one, intelligent, is interesting in a few ways. Intelligence in some ways implies our human rebirth. We are intelligent in that we can use these teachings to achieve our goal. We can achieve nirvana. We can achieve enlightenment with these goals. We have the intelligence and the body, the gross body and the subtle body as humans, to be able to use these teachings. So in some senses, intelligent is a code word meaning, you know, you're a human, you've got this precious life. Other beings don't have the intelligence to be able to use the Dharma. So we've got this opportunity. Be intelligent about the opportunity that we have with it, and the Dharma, and be precious with it. But But it also means, like you were talking about earlier, about being intelligent and being critical in a critique kind of way, not in a judgmental way, but have critical thoughts of the Dharma. It's not all going to sit perfectly well with you. There's going to be some things that don't sit well, that are hard to digest. And Master Shantideva says, if you don't understand it right away, put it on the shelf for a little while and work with it. An old Tibetan expression is cook it. Sit with it for a little while. Let it stew. Don't reject it outright. And that's part of that intelligence and being impartial, not throwing it out just because it doesn't sit well with you right away. Because maybe it does, that use intelligence. Use your critical faculties. Debate it. Cross-reference it across different teachings if you want. I like to do that, interestingly enough, when looking at different commentaries to the same source material. It's very interesting. It helps to have the same translator because that can throw things off. But I love to see it when two commentators do the same thing on the same verse in the original text, and then I know that it's right there. And that's using critical faculties to judge a text. The last one, aspiring to high things. We want higher goals. We talked a little bit about in the meditation of doing things not just for worldly goals. It's kind of code phrase. We didn't really get into it, but worldly goals means samsaric, right? It means that the karma resulting from those activities will only force a rebirth somewhere in the 6 realms of this cycle. So what we're striving for is higher than that. We're looking for results that will get us out of samsara, which is the suffering that we're in. We will suffer as long as we're in samsara. We need to aspire to that. It's nice to aspire to less suffering in this world because that's important. It's okay to do a meditation to just relax because relaxing is an important thing. But relaxing and just being happy is not going to help you help others the way you can if you were a bodhisattva. You're not going to eliminate all your suffering and everyone else's suffering by being relaxed. It's not that you have to be tense, but it's not the end goal. It's a worldly goal. And it's an important step, but it's not the end goal. So aspire to the highest goals is what it means.
Which would be enlightenment, or
Yeah.
which would be renunciation, and then
Well,
and then
it's a
wisdom,
difficult
or
thing.
that would
Quite
be-
often we have this catchphrase, for the sake of all sentient beings, and
Yeah.
we throw it off the tip of our tongue so fast we don't understand the import of that or how big of a task that is. So it's when we take refuge and generate bodhicitta, I think it's good to have that in mind, but it's also good to have concrete things in our daily world as well. Like implementing renunciation is a huge thing. And if you do it right, you are planting seeds which are beyond these worldly goals. So definitely, a little bit of both. Yeah, the macro and the micro, the near and the far. It's important to have tangible goals, and not just something that might, say, if all of these teachings were something you could use at the time of death only, no, it's too far away. It may be too close for, I don't know, you never know, but it might be too far away too. So hopefully it is, and that you'll live long lives. But you need something tangible, and it's not, as with all goals, set them so that, one goal of happiness and eliminating your own suffering, and say in a relationship or a job or something like that, might be a huge mountain for you to climb. And it may not be for someone else. So it's up to you. Set your own highly aspired goals. And then stick to them. We talked about resolve earlier, but it's not always a smooth ride, and it gets rough. And it's those times where you have to go back to your business plan and remember what you were there for and stick it out, And because it does change, everything changes. Everything good changes, everything bad changes. Yes. So it won't last forever as being bad. And that's one thing you can always, one upside to any bad situation. It too will change. But let's not look at it that way. All right, just in summary then, those three are: a student is impartial, they come with an open mind, they're intelligent enough to understand what's being said, and to let their intelligence rule their behavior, in other words, follow it. And then the aspiration to keep going even when it can get rough. Yeah.
Do you mind saying it one more time exactly? There's so much.
Yeah, so as students, we need to be, the student will come in and be impartial, and they will come in with an open mind. And as students, we should be intelligent enough to understand what's being said. And then let that intelligence rule our behavior, understand morality, and then practice it. And then as students, we need to have the aspiration to keep going even when it gets rough. So we as students have a role in all of this success. It's really important. And each teacher will have their own set of suggestions as well. Some teachers will make you travel long distances to go to teaching and put their teachings out in the middle of nowhere. Some teachers will ask you to do homeworks and quizzes. Some teachers will say you have to do a certain number of retreats and meditations or mantras. Each teacher may treat each student differently and say, you need this, you should do this, you should do that. So this isn't exhaustive, but this is the general space that you as a student need to approach teachings. And know that a teacher will probably ask you to do things more specific to what. And when a Lama and a teacher ask you to do something, it's usually because they know you need to do it. Because they have the knowledge and wisdom to know that it's good for you. Most of the Dharma projects that Lamas have, I think Lama Zopa is just building everything, around the world, all the centers and all those beautiful things he's doing in the Maitreya statue. They're all for us to benefit. So we do them because we need the merit for doing these virtuous activities. They're created, they're like contrived for our benefit. The same thing if a teacher asks you to go and photocopy something, for the class. It's only for your benefit that they're asking that. So when you, as a student, when that happens, look at it and say, they know I need to generate some merit and it'd be good for me and this is what I should do. And then with that mindset, do it joyfully and always dedicate at the end. I don't know, there's a lot to say about being a student. Everyone's going to have your own experience as students. But these are the qualities that you can strive for, and things to look at for in a teaching and in a teacher. And it becomes a nice set, these last two classes, a nice introduction to how you should be looking at the 5 books that we're going to be studying in the future, and the different teachers that ACI will have here, and the different teachers that will be coming in with the 3 jewels. You can apply all of this now. So here we are in the Introduction to Buddhism course, and we're kind of going over this as a foundation for you for the rest of your Dharma career. Any questions?
Would you share some things that you learned
As a student?
about what maybe that you noticed in students or that really worked for you?
As being a student, from my perspective? Yeah.
Do you mind?
No, I don't mind at all.
Thanks.
I'm just not sure where to start or where to stop.
Oh.
I think it's really interesting. Back to the Dharma project thing. Personally, because you asked personal experience, I was asked to do a Dharma project in 1999 and 2000 to help put these teachings, ACI teachings, on the web. And we did. We put out the first website for all these teachings, and it's still up actually.
Is that ACI Dharma?
Yeah.
Wow.
And
That's
putting
awesome.
these teachings on the web and organizing them and structuring them, getting all the audio up there and everything. And it was a real simple website in 1999. It was perfect, and then the Dharma was on the web, and that was the merit that I needed to get so much teachings afterwards. I know teachers were coming to me afterwards. I didn't even live in a place where there was Dharma. I was living in Ireland, and they were flying in and saying, we want to teach you. It was really, really interesting karma ripening from that. And they did.
Awesome.
And it was, I think, I'm not an omniscient. I don't know the direct causes for everything, but I do believe there's a connection that spreading the Dharma and putting it out there, and then having teachings because of that, as a ripening of that. I'm sure there's other causes for that too from other lifetimes, but I think that was a factor. And that was just joyfully undergoing a Dharma project that was asked of me. I've also said no to Dharma projects because I couldn't do them joyfully, and that might be a line to draw. If you can't do something joyfully, then maybe don't undertake it. And tell the Lama. One of our vows is to, if you can't do what the Lama says, to explain. And they'll be fine. They'll be like, oh great, glad you told me. You go over there, you want to do a Dharma project. So it's not a big deal. Just don't say you're going to do it and not do it. Just, if you can't do it, that's cool. Just go back and say, I tried, I just too many obstacles. I'm just going to not be able to do this, Lama. And that's fine too. That's very cool. And you're also keeping one of the vows. I think at a certain point, there's a trust in the teacher that you need to have, and a real a belief beyond doubt that they're teaching you what you need to learn. And I think an important role for the student at that point is to do what the teacher says. And if the teacher says, in the sense of practice what they teach, practice the Dharma. Don't keep it in your head. It's not a mental vault to know how many of these Kangyur texts and volumes you've kept in your head. It's how many have you actually implemented through your body, speech, and mind. How are you using the Dharma? And that's what I mean by doing what I say. Execute on it. Don't just learn it academically, but use it to change your life. And if you don't, then you're not going to get the benefits out of it. So as a student, I try to do this as much as possible, which means when times get rough, remember the proper worldview. Like when you get fired from the job, or you can't get a job, or your partner leaves, or this or that, it's understand why it's happening. Apply what your teachers told you about karma. And if you want a job or something, know how to get a job through karma. Really apply it. We're going to talk about karma next week. So we're going to do the 4 laws of karma, which would be nice. I don't know, do you have any yourself? There's so many, and don't be so serious sometimes. It's really important to relax and be joyful. Happiness is a very big part of being a student. Yeah. It is. Relax, be happy. So I just want to say that the reading for next week, if you're using the yellow book, then go through page 38.
Wait.
Oh no, sorry. 56.
Yeah.
There's okay, and if you're doing the printed version, 8.5 by 11, it's page 86. 86 if you're using that. So what's on page 38 of the book is the homework has a question, or has a request to memorize the first line, and that's on page 38 of the book. I bow down to Manju Gosha. I wrote it for you. And so you know what he's talking about in the homework, at the bottom of the homework, when he says memorize the first line of the verse. The first line of the first verse, that's the one.
Page 39.
38. Of the yellow book. If you're in the 8.5 by 11 printouts, it's page 41. So I just mentioned that so you could do the homework memorization and not be confused. And hopefully you can keep up with your renunciation meditations, because next week we talk about karma and we define and explain renunciation a lot more. I feel odd in that we've been asked to do renunciation meditations for 4 weeks, but we haven't really spent much time on it. Other than the time in the meditations, which was why the meditations are kind of teaching. There's not much meditation. It's kind of yammer type talk. Because we haven't really talked about renunciation, so I'm trying to give you some things that you can use for the next week in your practice. So we'll get to that finally next week. And karma. Yay! We have a lot to go over next week. We're out of the 10 lists of this and that. It's kind of nice. If anyone has any questions about anything over the week, you can always email me.
Can we ask him now?
Sure.
Okay, this Mushi Musham that you introduced us to a long time ago, like how would we use that? I'm still not sure I even understand that, frankly. But how would we use that to test renunciation, or to have an analytical meditation on renunciation in our lives?
Okay, so that structure of a debate is used in a debate ground in a monastery. And that's why it was introduced, because that's the way it's done there. And it doesn't work so well with apple and banana, because there's no debate about it. It's not an issue. So you have to understand a little bit about the structure of debates, and that there's two people, right? And the person standing up will kind of challenge the person sitting there. And they might say, I bet there's no connection between renunciation and the three principal paths, or renunciation of the three principal paths and Tantra. And it's kind of like a negative, saying there's always like, I bet you can't tell me this, or there's no relationship, there's no connection between the two. And this was the example given.
So then, if you can come up with 3 or 4 yeses in the Mushi Musam, then you do show there's a connection.
Correct, which means you win the debate.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So the respondent, I'm not sure what they're called, the debater who's sitting on the ground only has to refer to this debating technique of there's 3 or 4 connections between everything in a debate if you're going to draw relationships. And you can say that if I've drawn 3, then I've proven you wrong, and that there is in fact a connection between those two. So it's not, so to your query of how do you use it in analytical meditation, you'll have to play both roles, and you'll have to be the antagonist and the protagonist, and you kind of set up a principle, say, I don't know, maybe, could you do it you want to do something with renunciation?
Yeah, since that's our assignment.
Right. Other than the ones we talked about, because they were already part of the class, how could you, you could say, is there, I bet I can't, this kind of sounds funny, but I bet I can't, find a relationship between renunciation and achieving nirvana.
Okay.
Right? Or attaining the 4 bodies of a Buddha, which we probably already went over. Yeah. And then you say, oh, but there is the other side of you says, oh, there is a connection. And then you define either 3 of those 4 relationships as being true, and then you've proven your other side wrong.
So is it mostly, like, would you say debate is, well, in one case, a learning tool?
Oh, yeah.
And 2, like a way to get at what do you really believe?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So can I prove that there isn't, or can I prove that there is? To find out maybe, anyway, through logic, what do we really think?
Yeah. It does narrow out what you really believe in and what you don't, and helps you remove doubt. And all of this starts with intellectually understanding things, and then they become internalized a lot more. But the first stage is the intellectual understanding things, and debate really helps a lot with that, because it proves things to ourselves. And it's simply a tool to prove things to ourselves intellectually initially. But debate will not help with the direct realization of something other than that it gets you to the intellectual stage first, which is usually preliminary to a direct realization. You have a question?
Well, it struck me that doubt is not the issue here. If you're debating the point, my doubt is not important. What's in front between 2 people arguing a point is what's important.
Right, and a debate is an interesting structure. You're supposed to only debate someone who actually agrees with you, the parts of the debate, and the only difference is the conclusion drawn from the elements of the debate. So you both agree on all aspects of it, but draw a different conclusion. Like, we all see the world around us, and the Democrats and Republicans will look at the job report very differently, right?
And for any number of reasons, right?
Yeah,
In other words,
yeah.
it could be an ongoing discovery.
Uh-huh.
In other words, you pointed out about the negative. Well, let's say, and doubts may be on a personal level, or even we may be discussing that very element in terms of renunciation. Let's say, where does doubt play in? Okay. As an example both of how I as a practitioner, but also let's discuss it. Okay. It still doesn't matter in a sense that because it's what we deliver or are able to come to understand intelligently, as you pointed out before.
Right.
So this is a very long circle,
Uh-huh.
you know.
I guess I didn't mean to say that doubt was the topic of the debate.
No, it was fine. It was
Okay.
just an interesting thing to consider because what in fact we're doing, we're breaking things down.
Uh-huh.
In other words, the absence of something we find out in debate. Well, okay,
Yeah.
there's still the space open.
Uh-huh.
What in fact are we looking for?
Uh-huh.
In a sense of what is something, the
Mhm.
positive, or it's not this thing. So that's a negative. But it's
Yeah.
important to delete what things are not.
Yes, to change your set, to eliminate things from it.
Sure.
Yeah.
I have seen like that when people debate, and I'm like, are they getting anywhere? Are they getting anywhere? Is it actually going to help? Because it does seem, in my
Uh-huh.
view, that at a certain point, it only gets you so far. I'm like, you guys are like arguing so much, but at this
Yeah,
point.
but that's interesting because that's buying
Yeah.
time sometimes. But it's also coming up to like, what's the real question here? We can't quite get to
Yeah.
the thing
Yeah,
behind
right.
the thing.
Yeah,
That's what I
yeah.
meant by we deliver the goods, and now it's like, okay, there's an open space again. There's a
Uh-huh.
courtyard. There's a clarity in me, courtyard
right.
inside. Now let's
Uh-huh.
get to that.
All right, so
Uh-huh.
then you discover the next level. that
If you
needs
can.
to be-
But
Yeah.
some debates do go around in circles. There's a whole structure to debates that formally that we in the West don't usually follow.
Okay.
But they do. It's all laid out in the monastery. What paths you can take to prove certain things.
If you
And
follow
those
it
are-
directly, if you follow it exactly.
Yes,
Okay.
and those are what you kind of memorize and do in a debate ground as well.
So that's a course of study, so to speak. I mean, in the
Oh,
sense
it's a
of one
big one.
step forward. This is how.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So if
and-
you're understanding intellectually, at least, you should be following this line of thought as well as here. We're going to set it up this way.
Right, which
So-
means then you can come to any point in that and be able to respond to it because you know all the points, all paths. From
So
there.
if I'm getting here, but I don't quite understand it, then I have to fill in from here to here.
Yeah,
If I'm starting to spill over in the wrong,
yeah. Then it almost becomes what would you say? It's not a valid path to take out of that debate. Like you either have to do this or this, And if you do that, it becomes less of a tortuous circle when things are more formal like that. And that's how
Alright.
they've
Formal
avoided that
debate.
informal logic.
Okay.
But here in our debate grounds, sometimes it's just going back and forth.
All right, that's a good distinction. Thank you.
But the process is important, and each person is going to take away with what they can with debate. Some people love it. Some people have a lot of trouble with it.
We used to have the book that Venerable Ningpo published,
yeah.
Easy Logic.
Uh-huh.
Easy luck.
Easy Logic,
Are
yeah.
you
It's
going to
pretty
get it again?
great.
Well, we should get it again, yeah.
Yeah.
But
It's
it's,
really good.
yeah, it gives you all that
It's so
structure.
good, so user friendly.
Uh-huh. I looked at it online today and got 5 out of 5 stars.
Wow.
For what it's worth. And he's one of our peers who did he was brilliant, great debater and Tibetan speaker and scholar, and he just took this complex, logic from Tibet and he just made it readily available for us. So maybe who orders the books? Maybe we could get that.
Me
in.
and Mike.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you order 5?
Yeah, absolutely.
That'd be
It's
great.
great.
Who is the author again?
Eric Brinkman.
Brinkman.
Eric Brinkman.
Yeah, it is available on Amazon. Brinkman. Is it 2 N's in the end? No, one.
No, one.
It's Easy Logic, called Easy Logic.
so he has the karma that pierce through for us.
Sorry, no? Any
He
questions?
has the karma that pierce through
Yeah.
to deliver to us. We haven't talked about it.
Skillful means to teach something complex at our level. That's
Yeah.
another way of teaching.
Was that his Dharma project?
No.
No.
He
I guess.
does Dharma all the time. Yeah.
It's a calm for him.
It's his calm. Yeah.
One of many, for sure.
Okay, let's close out with our last prayer. The dedication.
Sunam Yeshe Swaso Shin Sunam Yeshe Lejungwe Dapa Kuni Topashok.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.